Okay, well, I mean, my background, as you said, is I worked for a long time in the business financial area and came in rather late in life. I'm now a thorough old age pensioner into this project, which we've been doing now since 2010. I think one of the things, clearly, it is enormously ambitious, and why does one do something quite as dramatic as this, is basically start and rebuild the entire welfare system. You could only do that because the legacy system had frankly reached the end of the road. It had been so complicated that it was so difficult to operate, it was so difficult to understand that you had to start again. Now that throws up, that decision throws a basic organisational problem up. And the problem is this: you have got an organisation in DWP that has been based around managing this sclerotic system, managing the tweaks, the problems. I mean, they actually do an incredible job of doing that, but that requires an entirely different skill set than the one required to build an entirely new system and to re-engineer from scratch. And so you need a lot of different and new resources to do that. And that is extraordinarily hard to do, certainly then, in a government context, when you're very circumscribed in the numbers of people you can bring in with those skills, which are inevitably rather expensive skills. And so you end up assembling teams based on the resources that you have available. And I think that is my number one lesson of all this, is look at how do you get the right team in. The other thing that hits me quite dramatically when I think about it is this organisation, DWP, and I suspect most large organisations, find it extraordinarily hard to work with something which is a concept, which doesn't exist. It needs to have something on the ground which it can start working with and seeing how it works in terms of what partners it needs to work with, what the claimants are doing, how its own organisation works. And I think that is an incredibly important thought, because it means it takes you, how do you introduce something a brand new? It means you've got to get something on the ground very, very quickly, which actually goes counter to some of the advice, get it all planned out beautifully. It actually says, no, don't, get something out quick, because then the organisation can see what it's dealing with. Nick made this point. I mean, the commissioning process, that when I went in 2010, basically the IT department in DWP and in other government departments was a commissioning IT commissioning organisation, because the IT skills had been sent out to the organisations. And we discovered that that was simply wrong. You can't do IT development separate from ops. And we tried very hard in Warrington, because the ops people up there, in external IT companies were there. But we ended up finding we had to bring it in and integrate it into one. And that is a big change for DWP, and indeed it will be for other government departments. So we had to rebuild our IT and how it operated within the organisation from scratch. It was a bit like replacing the train engine on the way from London to Birmingham. So we had to rebuild our organisation to be able to do that. And there are three areas of expertise which are scarce in our economy as a whole, which you need to really worry about having. And that is clearly IT in the sense of the data architecture, the software development, and all the different skills there. The second one is project management. and the third one is, I don't mean commissioning, I mean it's more important, the contract management. And those are three sets of skills, professional skills, very highly paid in the outside world, which you need to worry about having in place. One of the most interesting experiences, certainly of my life, was in 2012-2013, when we were designing the regulations that made universal credit. And we had, I mean, the whole department was working on this, and we had, I remember, 62 separate submissions come up of how we did at different areas of universal credit, and each one would have had roughly 5 different recommendations within it. So there are 300 decisions essentially to be made. And I remember we sat round the table, we called it the Hardlist Process, and we sat round the table, my table, would have been about typically 12 people depending, everyone there, the ops people, the policy people, the legal people, the IT people, the political spads, everyone there working on these conclusions. And it was amazing the number that we sent back to be revised, just to make sure the whole thing worked together and was coherent, because there were so many decisions. And I think that is an experience that I think people should think very hard about when they're trying to do something like this. The other thing is that some things you can go out and build, put a team out, send them outside government and go and build it, because they're pretty self-contained. When you're talking about something like universal credit, which, in a way it's at the heart of your society, the balance between the incentives you're trying to get people to do to manage their own lives and the safety net you're trying to provide, getting that balance, the political implications of that, the social implications of that, all of those things, they mean that you cannot send it out. It has to remain at the heart of your political process. And that means that your organisation has got to be able to do all of those things, and you can't get rid of it. I think the other thing that you find, as we went into this test and learn, we got the pathfinders, the live one, and then the digital one. We found things happened that we simply did not expect. Things that actually turn on your head, your whole way of doing it. And the example that I would use is we discovered that the claimants developed, they had a logbook with their work coaches, and suddenly the dialogue between the work coach and the claimant was going online on their smartphones, I'm off to look for a job now, or can I do that, or whatever. And so suddenly the whole pattern that we had of what the relationship at the heart of the system was changed, and we've had to test and learn out. So I think one of the things, is, what were we doing? In practice, what we had was a live system that had all the characteristics of universal credit, but was not interactive. And we learned a lot from that. That was what the live system was teaching us. And then the second system, the digital system, is when it became interactive as well. And I think if I was looking back, maybe if we'd been more explicit about separating those two things, we would have had a smoother ride. But that is one of the big lessons that I would take from it. And I think I just finally would close, the thing that I think the real reason that Nick calls it in recovery, the real reason it is going ahead, and it is because it works. And what is amazing is you go out round the job centres, and the enthusiasm of the job centre staff to have something that goes with the grain of what they're trying to achieve for the first time after being struggling with this legacy system. And these figures that we're getting out showing how much more motivated the claimants are, that is actually what has sustained it now as we drive it out. Because if we hadn't had that, it would have been much tougher to push through. So that, I think, is the reason. It actually does do what it said on the tin.